Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. So this is our little live Q&A about our Ayurvedic Spring Cleanse Retreat that is taking place May 3rd through the 5th in Hillsboro, West Virginia at a wonderful retreat center called the Yew Mountain Center. This is going to be a really immersive event, very hands-on. We're going to feed you. We're going to teach you things. But before we dive into all of that, let me do some introductions. So my name is Dr. Julie Hare. I am a board certified family physician, and so I'm going to be your host for this. See if we can get my computer to move forward. Let's see here. All right, there we go. Okay. So there's our little cleanse retreat poster. And so again, a little bit about me and who's talking to you. So again, I'm board certified in family medicine through the ABFM. I am the founder and owner of Allegheny Integrative Medicine, which currently is a health coaching practice, which is an integrative medicine approach to health coaching. And this is where things like the Ayurvedic retreat are born out of. I'm also a wife and a homeschooling mom. I run a small farm with my husband here in the heart of Appalachia in eastern Midwest Virginia. I live way up in the mountains. And I am also a patient. That may be the most important thing about me, is that I come from a place of what I see as relevant perspective, because I have been there. I have been the patient who has been ill, who has felt lost in the traditional medical system, has not found help there, and has had to seek alternative routes of healing and care. And this is basically how we have all come to this point on my little journey, is finding Ayurveda and finding value in that medical system, and really finding a deep healing. So that's where we're going to start with this. So the overview of what we're talking about today is we're going to really start in a forest for the trees picture. So we're going to talk briefly about what is Ayurveda, because some people have heard of Ayurveda, some people know what that is, and some people have no idea. So we want to get everybody on the same page. And then we're going to go into introducing what an Ayurvedic cleanse practice is all about. We're going to pull in two Ayurvedic concepts that are core to cleansing, which are called Agni and Ama. I'm going to go over those briefly. I have a full talk on these subjects on YouTube, which I will give you the links to. But just again, for the sake of completion and for your good foundational understanding, we're going to touch on these things because they're really at the heart of why we want a cleanse practice. We're going to discuss beyond food. So Ayurveda, and certainly Ayurvedic cleansing, has a real big focus on diet and nutrition. We use food to cleanse in the Ayurvedic system, but of course it's more than that. We'll go over the daily schedule and what our cleanse retreat is going to look like, and then we'll do some question and answer. So again, oh, and I apologize if you guys hear some noise in the background. My roof is being worked on today, so I apologize if there's any sort of distracting sounds. That cannot be helped, and that is life. Okay, so looking at the Indian sciences, Ayurveda and what is considered its sister science of yoga are part of what people see as the Indian sciences. And so Ayurveda and yoga are really the practices of the physical, emotional person, and is how you relate to yourself and how you relate to the world around you, which you are intrinsically tied to, right? So we aren't just little isolated units floating around space. We are very much part of everything that goes on around us. Seasons, local weather, geographic locations of where you live or travel, and certainly in the perspective of Indian sciences, planetary movements as well. So Ayurveda is really focused on right diet and right lifestyle, and yoga is the practice of how you connect yourself to the world around you and how you manage your energies. So a lot of people, certainly in America, think of yoga as yoga asana, which are the movement practices that if you actually get into the study of yoga, you will find that it is very little of that and a whole lot of other things. But that's for another talk. Another major Indian science that ties into this whole system is something called Jyotisha. So this is, at first glance, astrology, which it is. Now, this is not tropical astrology. This is what we call Vedic or sidereal astrology. It is slightly different. It uses some of the same terminologies that you know, like Virgo and Taurus and Capricorn, although there are Sanskrit words for these signs, these terms. This is really interesting, though, because it's not just you know, focused on you, like tropical astrology, which is what most people are aware of, like, you know, reading your horoscope in your local paper, really focuses on kind of who you are, you know, your personality, your taste, you know, who is a good you know, romantic mate for you, that sort of thing. And Jyotisha talks about that sort of thing too, but its core purpose is actually really the practice of psychiatry and supporting the mind through evaluating your dharmic purpose. So dharma is your highest purpose, the reason you were born into this life. You know, we all live in multiple layers. So yes, we're living for ourselves in some sense, but when you, again, when you zoom out and you look at that bigger picture, it is, you know, you and me and the person next to you as little puzzle pieces all fitting into the fabric of the universe. And how is it that we do that? You know, if you, so basically Jyotisha says that if you don't know the purpose of you, you cannot be truly happy. So that's the psychiatry behind it. It's very interesting. Vastu is essentially feng shui. So it is the proper alignment of energy to foster right living and a balanced and happy lifestyle and day-to-day experience through the way you arrange your physical space. And so that is everything from how you arrange things into a room, to how you build a home, to how you actually organize a village. There is actually a Vastu community here in North America, which you can look up online. Ayurveda specifically, so that's what we're here to talk about, breaking down Ayurveda into the Sanskrit core syllables. So pieces of words all have individual meanings, and then they come together to form words in Sanskrit, much like other languages. So Ayur is life and Veda is wisdom. And so when you put that together, you get the wisdom of life, and really properly translated, Ayurveda is the study and practice of the wisdom of long life. That is the point of Ayurvedic medicine, is to foster long, healthy life. Ayurveda does not believe in growing old and becoming decrepit. That is not supposed to be the fate of the physical human body. Ayurveda is derived from a vast series of texts collectively known as the Vedas. You can actually look that up online. It looks kind of like a family tree. It's not just a single tome. It's many different texts distilled down through generations of people, all building on itself. And it is really considered to be a complete system of medicine, a complete matrix of knowledge, because it is encompassing all aspects of human life. Again, the physiology and the psychology. It is the system of medicine that really recognizes the mind, body, and spirit, and how those three things are tied together. It is the knowledge, again, of all things physical. So it's not just human bodies or biological systems, it's animals, it's plants, it's minerals, it's all of those things. So deeply understanding the physical world around you. And according to Ayurveda, as we like to say, it all depends. And so this is really where the power of Ayurvedic medicine lies, in that it is very mutable. It varies in the way that one person can use it versus another. Another way to say that is it is very good. It is a system that has worked out thousands of years ago, long before we understood genetics and epigenetics, the subtle variations and differences between one human individual and another. And so you can have, say, the same quote problem that perhaps I can have, but Ayurveda would look at us as individuals and treat that same condition slightly differently, because it recognizes that it has the potential to arise in a different way from you versus me. So again, it all depends. So oftentimes when people ask me questions about, can I do this? Is this okay for me? I say, well, it depends, because that is truly the answer. Going a little bit more specifically into the substructure of Ayurveda, there's 4 kind of basic principles that Ayurveda is built on. And so that's dosha, dhatus, and shotas, Agni and Ama, which again we'll touch on briefly today. And then the subtle forces is ojas, tejas, and prana. So dosha, going back to the left here over the lotus symbol. So dosha is the physical manifestation of the 5 elements, which are earth, air, fire, water, and ether, or space. Because you cannot have anything if you do not have a container for those other things. So space is your container for all the manifestation of the universe. And so this is the principle of basically understanding and defining the individualism of human bodies, is understanding something like dosha. So we all have different combinations of these elements. So we are all distilled slightly differently with these 5 elements in our body. Everybody has all 5 elements in their body, but they are all in different ratios. And this sounds a little weird. We don't talk like this in the Western world, but it actually makes a lot of logical sense. When you look around you, you can see people who are thin and kind of airy and high, very like naturally flexible physically and also in their mind, but perhaps are a little more than a little prone to feeling stressed out or anxious, versus people who are just naturally have denser bodies, or quote more earthy, stable, like they don't get emotionally very upset, maybe a little bit prone to being more sedentary, et cetera, et cetera. So these are, you're looking at people through the Ayurvedic lens of people who have perhaps more air in their bodies versus more earth in their bodies. Moving on, so the idea that bodies are built on dhatus, which are body tissues, basically, and shotas, which are the channels that run through them. And that's very important to understand how the body is built in a hierarchical fashion, the way that it receives nutrition and nutrition flows through it, and also how those channels are supposed to operate and how those tissues are supposed to be fed, and because that is the basis of forming disease. So this is how we how if you understand how things are supposed to flow and are supposed to be balanced, then you will understand where potentially things get stuck or start to slide sideways, so to speak. And so this takes us right into the next concept, which is Agni and Ama. And basically Agni is your metabolism, literally means fire. It's the fire of you. And Ama is directly translated undigested food. So this is the stuff that builds up inside of you. And so this is, as you can, if you understand that you are made up of different tissues and there are channels that flow in between, and then you can have stuff that gets stuck in them, perhaps you can start to see how disease starts to manifest. And so this is certainly how Ayurveda sees this. I'm not going to go terribly into the subtle forces. It's a fascinating topic. It's really again, at the core of understanding human health and vitality, ojas, tejas, and prana. So a lot of people have heard of prana, which gets translated as the life force. And that's a fair statement for that. This is the way it's often explained in metaphor. If you were a light bulb, ojas is the glass, tejas is the light that is emitted, and prana is what turns it on. Okay, so let's dive into cleansing. So we cleanse in Ayurveda. Ayurveda, much like other religious practices or cultural practices, has a practice, so something you do regularly, where you stop and you change your routine in order to maintain your health. And the principle of this is that we tend to hold on to stuff, right? So it could be, for a lot of us, physically, right? And we are all living in this kind of overwhelmingly polluted world of too much food, not enough exercise. Our food isn't a very good quality, especially in America, and we run into issues like microplastics and forever chemicals, herbicides and pesticides, air pollutants, all these things, right? So this is also stuff that's getting into the body. Certainly, they weren't talking about plastics in the Vedas 5,000 years ago, but Ayurveda did have the wisdom to understand that the world is ever evolving and there's always going to be new stuff coming up, right? So this still applies, and in my opinion, applies more than it ever has now. So again, that's just focusing on the physical body is probably enough to get people on board to say, yeah, absolutely. I definitely notice that I feel better when I don't eat a ton of sugar, or when I get a really good night's sleep, or if I don't eat pizza before I go to bed, that sort of thing. And there's reasons for that, which we'll get into a little bit. Emotionally, we hold on to emotions. I think a lot of people know that. Everybody, certainly adults, have had the experience where you will be, some subject, something will come up, and all of a sudden you have a strong emotional reaction to it, especially things, from the past, and you'll be surprised, and you'll say, well, I really thought I was, quote, over that, or I had let that go, and there it is, still kind of hiding out in you, and that bleeds into the mental aspect of it too. So we're one thing that we're dealing with in society a lot is ADD or ADHD. Ayurveda does not see that as Ayurveda sees that as a natural tendency, but to have a level of distractibility and inability to concentrate, and not be able to keep your body still to the point where you feel like you need to take medication is not a natural state. And that's not to pass judgment on anybody or people who are neuroatypical. It is to just give you the perspective, or a different perspective, from a very powerful medical system. And for the people who I have taken through cleanses before, that's been one of the big things that I get back consistently in feedback, is how calm and focused I am by the end of it, how centered I am, how I was able to read something easily that I wasn't able to read before, something I was struggling with mentally, intellectually, just kind of went through, and I was able to resolve it. Cleansing is meant to be, in essence, a mindfulness practice. So, Ayurveda invites us to pause in any way that we can. Not everybody needs a full physiologic cleanse. Some of us really just need rest. And so it can be something as simple, really, as just taking a few days off from your job or your regular life, setting coffee aside for a few days. What is life like without coffee, or your favorite soda, or a cigarette, or a little sweet treat every night before bed? The things that you kind of do to, quote, reward yourself or pacify yourself, what does that actually do for you? This is how we actually gain insight into ourselves. This is the mindfulness practice, is the absence of things. This is what builds intuition around the human body. You don't really know what things are doing for you until you don't have them. And of course, we have deeper practices, things that can be multi-layered. And this is what we're doing in this retreat. So this retreat is meant to take you much deeper and into all of the aspects of the top bullet points. So the physical, the emotional, the mental. So we're really going to pull you out of your regular diet and your regular routine. We're going to take you through regular movement practices that are safe and gentle for everybody. I have a breath worker who does rebirthing breath work. He is going to come and work with small groups. And if you've never done that sort of breath work before, I've personally worked with this fellow. It's amazing. And Brent is very good. It's a really neat experience to use your breath to let things go. Ayurveda says things should never be extreme. You're never going to find anything that's really overwhelming or taxing in Ayurveda. Like, we eat through this cleanse. Nobody's starving here. So we don't worry about that, right? We're not like raw juicing or doing intense, 45-minute yoga sessions in 95-degree, 100% humidity studios. Like, that's like, Ayurveda would never do that to people. So I think probably the most important idea around seasonal cleansing, around Ayurvedic cleansing, is that we habituate these processes through practice. Ayurvedic cleansing is generally done in the spring and the fall, and we'll mention this again momentarily. So this is not meant to be a one and done thing. It can be. You can try it, experience, and say, I'm never going to do that again. And that's totally fine. There's no judgment around that. But the idea is that, again, much like other cultures and religious practices, we have these periods of time throughout the calendar year where we actually stop, take a break, and reflect on what's happened in the past 6 months to 12 months, reflect on what sort of habits we've pulled into our lives. Are those things supportive? Are they destructive? Sometimes it's really hard to tell, again, until you take a break. So again, going a little bit more detailed into this, what we're doing here is we're using seasonal energies to help release the buildup of Ama and to build up Agni. And again, I'll talk about those two concepts momentarily. And we're using specifically the energy of the spring and the autumn to do this. So Ayurveda sees the world, again, as something that is intrinsically tied into us. So a lot of you guys will understand how different you can feel when it's really raining and dark outside versus when it's bright and sunny and the air is very calm and things are dry and it's warm, right? You feel different. And you should, because again, you're not an isolated unit on the planet. Spring and fall are very changeable, right? If you think about it, spring and fall are the times where you really are like, oh, something's really shifting. And so you can actually grab that energy and help you move things through your body. So that's really the premise of this. And I like to say it's a period of JOMO. So the JOMO, if you don't know, it's the joy of missing out, which there's a great book out there entitled that. And so we really want to take a break of the regular routine that we're doing, habitually checking emails, scrolling on our phone. That's actually kind of one of the worst things that we can do to our brains. going to bed too late, binge watching Netflix, intense exercise. So for my athletes out there, this is the time to lay off a little bit. And help build your body back up. For some of you guys, need to move a little bit more, right? So instead of sitting on the couch, maybe actually getting up at 7:30, 8 o'clock and doing, 45 minutes of gentle yoga is going to be a new thing for you. And that would be great. During this period, we give you a very supportive diet. So we use a dish called khichdi. This is basically lentils and basmati rice cooked with seasonal vegetables, healthy oils, and digestive spices. And so this is not solely the only thing you will eat when you come to the cleanse, but it will be based around this dish. And so what is this basically? It's a food item or items that is basically giving you all of the fats, proteins, and carbs and nutrients that you need to survive and be a healthy, vibrant body. But it's really easy to digest. So we are not taxing the digestive system in order to obtain nutrition. And what this does is it lets off, especially as we carry this into a 3 to 5 day period, it lets off our physiology from digestion and allows it to shift to detox. We limit grains during this, especially during spring cleanses. A little bit heavier food in the fall, just because that's the nature of the balance of when the air gets cool and dry versus in the spring now when the weather's a little bit wetter. Basically, this is a no sugar, meat, gluten, dairy, ferments diet. We don't snack, we don't graze, and we really urge you guys to stop any sort of recreational drug use, cigarettes, coffee, and most tea. I didn't put that there. A little bit of green tea is okay. I've been a daily caffeine drinker for years. I love coffee. It's really hard to step away from these things, but your experience is so much deeper when you do. So a little bit more about khichdi, since it really is the center star of this experience, well, at least the dietary experience, and people are always interested in the food. What do you eat? So if you've never eaten khichdi before, it's basically, again, complete nutrition, something that's very easily digested. It's hydrating, it's soothing. This is one example of what it can look like. Traditionally, the legume and the rice are all cooked together into a porridge. Sometimes we will separate that out into more of like a dal and rice kind of thing. So again, you're not just going to be served monotonous bowls of porridge over and over again. Please don't think it looks like that. It can look like a lot of different things. But the main point is that we're pulling in a lot of seasonality. So a lot of green things, lighter legumes, a little bit more bitter and astringent herbs, all of these things. Basically, if you were to, go back a couple of 100 years, what would you be eating right now, right? You wouldn't be being able to go to the grocery store and get blueberries and watermelon from Mexico. You would be walking through the woods and picking the little green things that were coming up out of the ground. This is the way the human body is supposed to cycle. It's the way that we're supposed to be massaged nutritionally and energetically. And so we bring that element into the cleanse. Just a few words on drinks. So basically, Ayurveda doesn't do ice like ever. If you are a hot constituted person like I am, you sweat easily, you flush easily, and the middle of July is not your friend. A little bit of ice when you're working outside isn't going to make or break you. But generally, we always promote room temperature fluids, specifically lots of water in this one. We'll be doing digestive herbal teas. And we really promote you to sip hot water throughout the day. That really gets your digestion going. We generally promote electric kettles when you're doing this at home, because that's what makes getting hot water really easy. And even during the cleanse, we're going to have like a thermos of hot water for you guys at all times, but bringing insulated cups and things so you can sip and walk around is a really great idea. Green tea is fine if that's something that you like and makes you feel good. We will be offering a little bit of golden milk as well, milk with Y, because we don't do dairy when we're cleansing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the deeper why of this. And again, I have a full talk on YouTube. It's like an hour and 20 minutes. The link is on this. If you guys want this PowerPoint when we're all done, just email me and I'll give you the email at the end. So I'm not going to go into this in huge detail because again, it's its own huge discussion, but you should understand what are. That's important to this. So Agni is the fire element of the body. Okay, it is the metabolism of you, but it's so much more than that. So Ayurveda says that Agni is really the bridge in the body. It is what unites your body, mind, and spirit, basically. It's the radiance of you. It's your ability to be dynamic. It's your ability to think, and it's your ability to digest and maintain homeostasis. So people who are chronically constipated, people who are chronically cold, they have a low Agni state. And this is the premise of the start of disease processes. So when your ability to maintain body temperature, when your ability to completely digest something, to break it down, to assimilate it, to take it in as nourishment, and then to get rid of what you don't need, which is all functions of Agni, when that is compromised in any way, you will start to have, you'll start to kind of slide sideways and start to have issues, physiologic issues. So whether that is inflammation, it can come in little signs like I start to get, again, I'm falling asleep at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I need a coffee, or every time I eat, I get a little bloated and gassy, or rashing out for no reason. So these subtle little things that we don't really recognize in Western medicine as an issue are signs of low Agni and a high Ama state, which we'll get to in a second, because they are inversely proportional to each other, essentially. So this is the beginning of disease, and this is what we seek to take care of when we stop and cleanse and learn what right diet, right lifestyle is for us in general. So again, Agni maintains that digestion. It maintains, basically the acuity of you. So like your visual perception, like, do you have like good sharp vision, your internal temperature, your ability to think things through, your sense of strength, like how vital you feel, your body's ability to mature. So children have naturally very high Agni states, right? Kids can eat a ton of food and then go run around and hang upside down and they grow overnight and that sort of thing. That's a sign of excellent Agni. I always like to add this in because everything in Ayurveda is more than just one layer. We're always talking about the physical, the mental, the emotional, the energetic layers or it's always considering that, whether we're talking about it actively or not. And so Agni has, again, that mental, emotional aspect of its function behind it. So it encourages shwaryam, which is courage, harsha, joy, and clarity of mind. They say if you have a very low Agni state, you cannot laugh. And I think that may sound a little weird, but I think if you think about it, when you've met people who are very sick, right? They're all bogged down, they don't feel good, or very depressed, which are low Agni states, you don't see them smiling. So again, Ama is kind of the opposite of Agni, or what you get when Agni is low. And so again, the definition of Ama is purely undigested food. it can come in the accumulation of waste. So whether you don't sweat enough, whether you are constipated, whether you hold your urine. So that's one thing that talking about channels and the way that things are supposed to flow through the body, Ayurveda says you should never hold it. Okay. So this whole thing that we do in the medical system where, you know, you work a 12-hour shift and you kind of proudly say to somebody, yeah, I haven't used the bathroom all shift. That's terrible. Doshic accumulation, which again is just the doshas are the distillation of the 5 elements, and so you can actually take on too much of one element or the other, and I'm not going to get into that in incredible detail, but that is put there for sake of completion. So again, it's a balancing act. Basically, it's bringing you back into balance. Ama is also generated by unresolved or repressed emotion. And so if you're somebody who, you know, really just tries to keep the peace and doesn't, you know, often doesn't speak their mind, that is seen as something that isn't great in Ayurveda. We should work to find ways to peacefully and supportively express ourselves to the people around us. So Ama is the root cause of disease. Basically, low Agni, high Ama circumstances are what cause all diseases. Heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, all of these chronic issues that you see in the world that are only getting more prevalent. This is the Ayurvedic explanation of those things. So I put in some signs of these states, like how do you know? How do you know when you have a low Agni state and a high Ama state, right? So we often talk about body odor. And some people have more natural body odor than other people, but this is like body odor that is not good. Like you don't like the way you smell. You wash yourself and it doesn't come off of you. A lot of tongue coating, like you wake up in the morning and you feel like you have a furry tongue, that's Ama sign. Infections, or I also need to put in there allergies. So not being able to fight off things very well. People who are always, quote, catching everything that comes by them. People who have recurrent sinus infections, recurrent lung infections, recurrent urinary tract infections. This is a low Agni, high Ama state. And allergies, environmental allergies are the same thing. Yes, we have a tendency to have a lower immune state as we get older, and Ayurveda absolutely recognizes that we don't all get to be, you know, 15 years old for the rest of our lives, but there are things that we're supposed to be doing to support our aging systems. Remember, this is the system of wisdom of long life. And so again, these should not be natural states of being. It is considered fairly normal to get sick periodically, but not to be sick regularly. Chronic fatigue, brain fog, loss of libido, exercise intolerance. That's like I exercise and I feel awful afterwards. General sense of malaise, I just don't feel good all the time, and any sort of indigestion issue. So gastrointestinal function is key in Ayurvedic wisdom and understanding where disease comes from. Anything that gives you any sense of your digestive tract working. Basically, Ayurveda says that you know your Agni is good and your Ama is low when you can eat something and you have no idea where it is in you. So you should not feel bloated, you should not be belching, you should not have heartburn, you should not be crampy, you shouldn't get gas, you shouldn't get constipated, all of these things. None of that should be happening to you when you are feeling balanced. So all diseases, acute and chronic, are a low Agni, high Ama state. So this is why we stop and we take care of ourselves. And this is what we're doing when we take out those sticky, heavy foods, when we take out drugs like caffeine and sugar. They're absolutely drugs. And we have a period where we go without these things and we let that body clear itself out. You'll experience it. Like when we're on a cleanse, you'll feel your Agni go up, you'll feel better, you'll feel your body will physically feel lighter. People will have all kinds of interesting little experiences, like again, like I was talking about the brain fog and the mental acuity earlier, but also just like having your sense of taste come back. That's one of the big things people will talk about. Like, I taste things so much more thoroughly now. I didn't realize that such and such had a taste, or I really found out that I don't need sugar or salt on this at all, that sort of thing. Okay, a little bit beyond food. So getting into the rest of the cleanse and what that's going to look like. So again, it's May 3rd through the 5th at the Yew Mountain Center in Hillsboro. And if you want to see a little bit more detail about the Yew itself, and read my little kind of summary on all of this, this is on our events page on the Allegheny Integrative Medicine.com site, and I will give you links to that as well. That's on Facebook, that you can find that. There's links to our events page all over the place, but I will give that to you as well at the end. We're going to give you a lot of education. So I think that we're doing all of this stuff, right? But it doesn't really have teeth. It doesn't really penetrate unless you understand the why of things. And so I'm planning several great, hold on, sorry, we're just muting everybody here. I'm planning several great interactive discussions with you guys on Ayurvedic subjects. We'll go into Agni and Ama really deeply, and we've got a couple of other ones. One of the things I always talk to you guys about is a concept called dinacharya, and so that is basically your daily habits. How does Ayurveda see how the human body is supposed to kind of move through the day? And the spoiler for that, the kind of how you wake up and go to bed are kind of the most important things. Those tend to be the things that we have the most control over. We've got some workshops for you planned. So I do herbal walks out in the woods. There is no better place for that than the Yew Mountain Center, which is a forest farming initiative. They have done an amazing job on their grounds. They even have things labeled, which is really fun. We have daily guided practices. And the Brent's breath work is part of our workshops as well. And again, that's something that we'll kind of organize when you guys show up. So daily guided practices. And so that's mostly movement with my friend Nikki, who's been becoming and doing integral yoga practices with you. She is really wonderful. She practices here, does yoga for everybody. So, I mean, I've seen her, have, 18-year-olds and 80-year-olds in her sessions, and she's so good. She can just get anybody. Don't worry. If it's been a while since you've sat on the floor, don't sweat it. And of course, all of this stuff is optional. You don't have to do any of this. The food, of course, is huge. We feed you. You do not have to bring a thing to eat. Unless you have, specialty stuff that you need to do, you have some concerns about dietary restrictions. Of course, as you register, we'll be asking you guys about, allergies and that sort of thing. I do always want to point out that if you are an anti-lectin person, that this is probably not the thing for you, because we do use, again, legumes as the core of our therapy.
The problem is this is a FBI director. This is a left-wing.
Let's see here.
Not an organization. Oh,
you got it.
Not malicious. That's what his FBI director said.
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done. Moving on to the next. We're moving.
We're going to try to. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So where were we? Okay. Oh, and post-cleanse support. So, we don't just get rid of you. we want you to feel supported through the whole thing, and kind of how you transition back to your quote normal lives, and your experiences afterwards. So I give you guys a lot of points of contact. and how we can interact following up afterwards, because I always love to know what your experiences were and, you know, your challenges and your wins and that sort of thing, as we go through the process, because again, it's supposed to be a process. Let me see here. So, okay. So, and this is the last thing I'm going to lead you with really before we go into some questions. So I want to give you a couple of options for doing this. So the first option is just to show up, just to show up and just be with us and experience everything that we're offering and go home and go back to your regular life. The way that I have certainly done this in the past with people, the way that this is minimally traditionally done is with a full 5-day protocol. And so this is a properly, the Khichdi cleanse is accompanied by a practice called Snahana Varachana. And so this is basically internal oleation used to really pull ama out of the system. And so what that looks like is you take an increasing amount of melted ghee by mouth. So like you wake up in the morning, like you brush your teeth, like, and if you're, you know, if you're doing this with us at the cleanse, you'd show up in the morning and before you basically ate anything, you would take, we usually start with a half a teaspoon and you kind of double that every day as you're working up. So you end up with like kind of 2.5 tablespoons at the, or teaspoons at the end of it. And so you swallow that and you wait about 30 minutes before you eat or drink anything, or you can sip some hot water while that's kind of working through you. It's not awful. For those of you who are vegan, you can certainly do it with coconut oil. That's the other thing that we use. And then, so you do that day 1 through 4. And then on day 5, you wake up in the morning, you take 1.5 tablespoons of castor oil and you sip hot water and you don't eat anything until it works through you. This results in an amazing end product, basically. Like this is really where the rubber meets the road and you feel really good. Now, this means that you have to go home and continue to kind of do this for yourself. So you have to understand what your diet is supposed to look like, and you have to make some time around it in order to take time off from work or, you know, other sorts of deeper, more energetic involvements or duties that you have. You know, this is not the time to be digging ditches or, you know, going through a stressful like business deal or something like that. Of course, life happens and we understand it. It's just you'll feel it a little bit more. You're like, oh, I don't have a lot of energy for that. And certainly the castor oil day, that is the day that you really, you know, want to hang out near a bathroom until that finishes. Usually you have somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 3 really good bowel movements and you feel really cleaned out, and, you know, you'll kind of get a sense. You're like, yeah, that's all done. And that can take a variety of times for people. So, I mean, and I've experienced a variety of times doing it. I mean, it's worked almost immediately in some senses. And in other times I've done it, it's taken the better part of a day for it to work through me. I have met one person who did it, who's done it a number of times. And once she said that it did nothing. She was like, I guess I really needed the oil. And again, if you want to do that, we can be talking about that prior to you getting there and then arriving at the retreat. And then, you know, again, you know, taking it as part of your kind of post live retreat support is walking you through that. Like, hey, how are you doing? Hey, it's day 5. This is your
I was proud of my son. All right, but he wasn't given $10 million.
Back here, I'm going to try to mute him again.
You've already been totally discredited.
Let's make. Okay, there we go. There we have a noisy person who shows up. Okay, so. Okay, so a quick word on rooming before we get out of here. So we have limited rooms at the Yew, but we have a lot of different options. So there's some single rooms available. There's room sharing. This is the best deal that you can get. It's super, super cheap if you can like bring a buddy and share a room. So generally 2 or 3 people to a room. We have some like cabin cubbies basically. So it's like little private partition beds in a shared space. So you definitely have like private space where you can pull a curtain and that sort of thing. Also very economical price wise, but not 100% private, and that's going to be a little bit remote to shower facilities and a bathroom. And then there's lots of camping space at the U. So that's if you wanted to actually bring like a little camper, something with hookups, or straight up primitive camping. Just if you come with a tent and you want to do the primitive thing, which is awesome, just make sure that you bring lots of stuff so you don't get cold. There's also tons of local Airbnbs right in the neighborhood, so you can come and go pretty quickly, even though the U is kind of really tucked back there on Lobelia Road. There's lots of places to Airbnb and have like your whole sense of a home away from home kind of digs. And I have links to that on the events page as well, so you can check that out. Okay, so we're going to go into any sort of questions you guys might have. And also just to remind you, this is where everything goes, right? So if you want to ask questions, if you want to,
I'm not going to answer the question because the question is,
if you want to register, this is the place. So iu.cleanse@gmail. That is how you get to us. So send me an initial contact. I'm happy to talk to you guys on phone as well, because again, we have to kind of work out housing issues with you. So it's like, I have to, either you're going to tell me that you're going to Airbnb, or we're going to work out, kind of person by person, how is it that you're going to come and stay on the site, and you coordinate all that through me, which is why we haven't really done a just automated, here's your sign up page, here's where you get tickets and that sort of thing, because the U is a little individualized in that sense. So, okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and we're gonna pull you guys in. Okay, so you are welcome to unmute yourself, or just type in to the chat any sort of questions you have. Yes, I like the emotional mental aspects represented as metabolic waste. Absolutely. That is something that we talk about it in the Western world. We have language around that, like, again, like having that surprise that you've kind of held on to something you thought you had released or gotten rid of, or resolved, or let go, and that it's still kind of hanging out there. But certainly I don't think we really connect the dots around how much that can actually push us down a disease pathway. And that might not be entirely clear to you right now either, in just this little 1 hour talk that I gave you. But it's, when you go on to study Ayurveda and its details, it's very much elucidated, and well defined how that happens, what those pathways look like. Does anybody have any questions about anything? And again, please feel free to email me with them as well, because it's pretty typical to sit here and think that you've gotten all of your answers and you don't. So any questions? Now I'm going to try to think if there's something I didn't tell you guys.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, go ahead, Sharon.
Always great. I learned time. So it really hit me when you talked about being cold and constipated, and it being like a predictor maybe for disease. And you know how cold I am. Yeah. And I've been thinking about this because it's not just that I'm cold, it's not just uncomfortable. It's like I can't tolerate it. Like when I was at Jordan's, actually almost crying. I was
so cold.
And so I was wondering, is that I know we talked about ghee, and I have it, but I hardly ever use it. I use either olive oil, sesame, one small coconut. Should I be only using or mostly using ghee? And what are the things you think would
Yeah,
be helpful?
sure. So ghee, ghee and sesame oil are considered to be the two warmer oils in Ayurveda. Anything that is warming is good. So definitely more oil, because we see that as an imbalance of air, basically, without going into using a lot of Sanskrit terms that I didn't define in this talk and that people might not know. But, so it's like too much air and too much space in the body, right? I mean, how do you feel when you're cold, right? You feel shivery, you kind of feel, a little scattered, right? You have a hard time concentrating. You can feel kind of pulled in, but like jittery and vibrational, right? And so the way that we pacify that in Ayurveda is through the use of a lot of oil. And so we promote people to do a practice called Abhyanga, which we'll talk about during the cleanse. And so that's self oil massage. And so doing that for somebody like you, doing that almost every day would probably be really great, where you would, especially for somebody like you, like locking yourself in the bathroom, turning on the shower like full tilt, like hot water steam, and then like actually like rubbing yourself down with warmed oil, you'd probably make you feel really, really good. It's a pretty the massage is supposed to be pretty vigorous. So it's not just like gently wiping it on yourself. You're really kind of like, good hard strokes up the long bones and circular motions over your joints and that sort of thing. There's 1,000 YouTube videos on how to like Abhyanga. If that wasn't enough explanation, it's fairly intuitive. But eating more oil, and people really, our culture has been taught to be afraid of fat. So fat does not make you fat. Fat does not give you heart disease. Now, the fat that comes out of the drive-through window at Dairy Queen does, but that's not real fat. Okay, that's not food. That's hydrogenated vegetable oil that's been like, processed with hexane. That's not, that's just ama that you're eating. You're not eating nutrition. So especially for women after menopause, bringing in lots of good fats. I'm not saying like deep fried food or like stuff that's dripping with grease, but really having like a good couple of like, few teaspoons or even a couple of tablespoons a day of fat in your food is good for you. And it will make you feel a lot more vital and kind of fortified. Warming spices will help that too. So warming spices are obviously anything that's spicy, and if you don't like hot spicy food, then that's fine. You don't have to eat like habanero peppers, but things like black pepper, garlic, um, ginger, cinnamon, cardamom, all of these things that help promote digestion, and the kind of the classic spices that you would see in North America around the holidays. So those don't just accidentally get into the diet, just because they taste good in a pumpkin pie, right? They've actually like migrated into our culture through many generations because it's been what's been seasonally appropriate, right? The weather gets cold, we want to warm ourselves up. This is what we eat. Salt, actually, that's another thing that's been really vilified in Western medicine is salt. Salt is warming. Salt helps you digest. Salt helps you hydrate. Where salt goes, water follows. And so another being cold thing sometimes is being a little too dry in general. And so remember, drinking lots of cool fluids, like even water, can make you too chilly. I always remind people that your best hydrating sources are actually food. So making sure your food is wet. So things like porridges, oatmeal, stews, soups, chili, that sort of thing, that, and some of those things intrinsically kind of pull in some of those warmer spices as well. That can also really help you feel warmer. And so that would be absolutely the Ayurvedic approach to like boosting Agni in somebody like you, and to help kind of build up that homeostasis ability. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Cool.
And I love
It's a great question.
Yeah. No, I do the Ayurvedic cookbook. I make that mix, that sweet spice mix,
Yes.
oatmeal, sweet potatoes. It's
Yeah,
so good.
very good. Yeah, that her sweet spice, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, her sweet spice mix is got a lot of warming stuff. And I think there's a warming spice mix too in there. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah.
But that's a good one. So, okay. Any other questions, folks? That's a great question. So many of us ladies are so chilly. Anybody else? Okay, that's a good one. Well, like I said, you guys can definitely email me. IU.cleanse, it's all over Facebook. It's a little bit on Instagram. Our website is pretty clear. Like, you go to the events page and just scroll through, like everything is right there. I've got a little like prep talk on cleansing. We've got I will actually, I don't think I have it. I'll put up the link to the Agni and Amma talk that's on YouTube. We've got pictures of the Yew Mountain Center, examples of rooming options. We've got links to our fabulous chef who is going to cook for us, all the things. So it was great to see some of you guys who showed up. Again, we're going to make this recording available to everybody who didn't, because I know it's so hard to coordinate schedules and make a time that works for everybody. But yeah, that is what I've got for you guys today. So thank you all so much for showing up. It was so lovely to see all of you.
Well, thank you. Great. It was great.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you so much. Yeah. So hopefully I hope to see you guys at the U.